Hello everyone and welcome back to Finance Prep, Finance Made Easy. So today in this lecture we are going to continue with unit number 6. In unit number 6 we had already covered topics like what are the different requirements to become a mutual fund distributor in India. So what are the different criterias, how do you fulfill those criterias, how as a mutual fund distributor you earn commission in the form of trail commission, correct? So today in this lecture we are going to continue with the same unit, that is unit number 6. And we'll be covering the further topics which covers the first topic, that is a due diligence process that is to be done by AMCs for distributors of mutual funds. So here you'll also understand the bifurcation between an advisor and a mutual fund distributor. Generally, we use the concept interchangeably. We feel the advisor and the distributor can be one and the same. However, in actual terms, they cannot be one and the same. They have to be separated. The role of an advisor has to be different and the role of a mutual fund distributor has to be different. Plus, if you want to become a mutual fund distributor in India, what are the different due diligence processes that you have to follow as a mutual fund distributor and as an AMC who are empaneling these distributors in their panel, correct? The next is the nomination facilities for a mutual fund distributor, a very important topic if you are willing to become a mutual fund distributor in India, right? So what is the nomination process? After you, who is going to earn commissions? How are they going to earn commissions? Till when they will be able to earn the commissions, correct? And plus there are certain prerequisites that the nominee that you're naming here will require. So what are the prerequisites that the nominee has to fulfill is also given here. The next is a change of distributor. So as an investor, I have the complete right to change the distributor as per my will. I don't need any additional processes or documents or NOC from the existing distributor to change my distributor. However, to protect the interest of the distributors, where any other distributor does not focus on poaching your clients, there are certain limitations, criteria and rules that are set by SEBI for the change of distributor as well. Okay, so that is what you're going to cover in this particular lecture, correct? Now, the first topic if I talk about is the monitoring portfolio turnover. Now, if we talk about the monitoring of the portfolio turnover, this is in continuation of the last topic that I had taught. In monitoring of the portfolio turnover, you need to check whether the company's average portfolio turnover is twice than the industry average. Okay, so for example, let us say if the industry average is 100 and this particular company's average turnover is 200 or more than 200, in this case there is a due diligence process that is required additionally compared to other companies that do not cross this limit, right? The second important thing, this provision that is set, it is specifically to ensure that there is no mis-selling or switching that is happening here. See, the role of SEBI here is to protect the interest of the investors. So somehow I have to ensure that while selling different mutual fund schemes, there is no misconduct or unethical practices or mis-selling. For this, there are certain rules that are set up where it also ensures that the scheme that is sold or in a way suggested to an investor also matches the requirements. You cannot be selling random schemes to any investor who might be ignorant, who might not have that much of knowledge about mutual fund and their schemes, right? Now, if we talk about the due diligence process that these AMCs has to go through, provided their average is double the market standard average, in this case, there are certain due diligences that the company has to go through, okay? First, if the AMC has more than 20 locations in India, so it is considered as a huge AMC, the due diligence processes additional applies to them. If their AUM is about 100 crores, that is for non-institutional, okay? For institutional, 100 crores is not really a big amount, correct? If the commission earned is more than 1 crore across industry, because if their AUM is more than 100 crores, commission 1% will always be more than 1 crore, right? Commission about 50 lakhs for a single AMC. Now, if I am a mutual fund distributor, I can get myself empaneled with multiple AMCs, right? So, the commission earned from one AMC should not exceed 50 lakh rupees. In these cases, these AMCs have to go through additional due diligence processes to ensure there is no mis-selling, to ensure there is no unethical practices that they are conducting. Okay. Now, if we talk about the evaluation, there are multiple factors that are evaluated here. For example, the business model and the competence. So, when you talk about any distributor's experience, their infrastructure, their operational capability, this is a very important part that is needed to be evaluated. The second is the regulatory and legal track record. This is something that I always look for in any AMC that I am willing to invest into their mutual fund schemes. So I need to know what is their history, what are the legal track records previously, what are the kind of grievances that were filed against them, what was the answer rate, are there any existing legal proceedings against that particular AMC, etc. Correct? The next is the background of the related entities. What is the background of the fund manager? What is the background of the mutual fund distributor? What is the background of all the people that are involved in this particular process? Because they will be handling your money, they will be in a way handling your schemes, right? The next is the organizational controls. So there must be clear separation in any AMC between their customer risk profiling, scheme evaluation and the suitability assessment as per the financial goal of the investor, sales and relationship management function. So there should be different departments, different specialists in different departments handling these particular tasks. Okay. This is very important so that whatever recommendations are given to the investors, they are not biased by the sales incentives. See, a lot of times we try to sell more of mutual fund schemes because we earn commission out of it. But ideally, if you see the SEBI rules and regulations, there is a clear process that is given of misconduct where if you're trying to sell any mutual fund scheme which does not match the requirement of the investor or the financial goal of the investor, it is known as misconduct or mis-selling. So it is very important that you understand the requirements of the investor and accordingly, as per their requirement and financial goal, you suggest the mutual fund schemes and not vice versa. Correct? Now, if we talk about the distinction between the advisors and the mutual fund distributors, like I was talking in the start of this lecture, generally advisors and distributors are considered one and the same. But in real sense and as per the definition that is given by SEBI, they both are different people with different objectives and different roles. So you cannot mix up an advisor with a distributor, right? Why? Because when you talk about an advisor, okay, that is an mutual fund or investment advisor, and when you talk about a distributor, that is a mutual fund distributor, there is a clear separation between both. Now, when you talk about an investment advisor, he or she is a person who provides investment advice to the clients. Obviously, for this, they charge certain fees. So, for example, I have a certain X amount of money. Now, I want to know where do I invest my money through which I can fulfill my financial goals. I need to go to an advisor. An advisor is a person who is well aware of the different investment options in the market, the processes, the amount of investment, the risk appetite, etc. And he or she can clearly suggest the areas of investments to an investor which will help him or her fulfill their financial goals. Okay. Whereas, if you talk about a person who holds himself out as an advisor, who calls himself as an advisor, it falls under the definition of the investment advisor. So, if I say advisor or if I say investment advisor, they are one and the same. However, on the contrary, a mutual fund distributor who is registered with an AMFI is exempted from the IA registration only if the advice given is incidental to the primary activity of distribution. Which means, I'll tell you very clearly how the distinction goes. If I am a mutual fund distributor, I am always going to be focusing in selling my mutual fund schemes. However, the advisor cannot do that. An advisor is a person who has to suggest you different options based on your requirements. They're not going to promote a certain set of schemes to you, right? So, distributor cannot be quoted as an advisor. Okay, if I go to mutual fund distributor who has maybe a 50 options of mutual fund schemes and I ask him, out of all the schemes that you have, which is suggested for my financial goal, that's a different story. But he cannot be called an advisor where based on my risk appetite or amount of investment, he is not going to give me a complete advice on building my portfolio, right? So when you talk about a mutual fund advisor and a distributor, there is a clear distinction. A distributor cannot call himself as an investment advisor. An investment advisor, vice versa, cannot be called as a distributor and cannot sell mutual fund schemes and earn commissions on them. Advisory and distribution activities must remain clearly separated. It cannot be combined. It cannot be considered one and the same. I cannot play the role of an advisor as well as a distributor both. I have to choose whether I want to be an advisor or whether I have to be mutual fund distributor. In this module, we focus on mutual fund distributor because this certification is required to become a mutual fund distributor in India. Okay. Now, if we talk about the mutual fund distributor versus an advisor, this is a clear distinction that is given so that understanding becomes very easier from your point of view. Now, when you talk about the income they earn, if you are a distributor, your trail commission becomes your major source of income. However, if you're an advisor, the fees that you get from the client, the investor whom you're providing investment advisors, the fees that you charge will become your main source of income or earnings. Registration with AMFI is mandatory for any mutual fund distributor in India through which they get the ARN number generated. However, to become an investment advisor also you have to register yourself with SEBI. So you cannot just randomly become an investment advisor also. Again, you require a registration to be done with SEBI. Now, when you talk about the role, their role is distribution of their product. That is the distribution of the mutual fund schemes that they hold. Okay, so they will always focus on selling their own mutual fund schemes. However, they provide independent advice. They don't favor any particular scheme of any AMC or any category. They will provide you independent advice based on your financial goals, your risk appetite, your quantum of investment, etc. When you talk about the conflict, now here they may have a product bias. Obviously, that is why distributor should never become an advisor. That is why there should be always a clear distinction. If I am a distributor while providing advice, I will always prefer promoting my schemes or my product. And that is where there is a conflict. At times, I might even overlook the requirement of the investors or their financial goals because I am promoting my own schemes. Okay. However, if we talk about the investment advisor, they do have a fiduciary responsibility, the responsibility to give correct guidance on investment based on the investment goals or the financial goals of the investor. Correct? So, a person cannot have both at a time. You have to choose whether you want to become an advisor or a mutual fund distributor in India. You cannot play both the roles simultaneously. You cannot earn fees as an advisor and commission as a distributor simultaneously. Okay, for some part of your career, you become an advisor. Then you leave that particular area and then you get into a mutual fund distributor area. That's a different story. But it cannot be simultaneously. Together, no, you cannot play both the roles simultaneously. Okay. Now, when you talk about an advisory versus the execution model only. Now, what is an execution only model or execution model only? SEBI recognizes there are two types of client relationships in distribution. One is an advisory relationship. The second, there is an execution only relationship. There cannot be any other category except for these two. Now, when you talk about as an advisory model, in advisory model, the distributor has to provide advice which distributing product, it is subject to the principle of appropriateness, a very important part. Now, what the principle of appropriateness says? The principle of appropriateness says whenever you are giving any advice or suggesting any particular mutual fund scheme to an investor or a prospective investor, it has to be based on the principle of appropriateness, which means the scheme that is suggested by you has to match the goal that the investor holds. So, before suggesting any mutual fund scheme to any particular investor, you need to understand the requirements, their financial goals, the risk appetite, the time period that they want to fulfill their goal in, their investment quantum, etc. Only after understanding and studying these details shall you suggest the schemes that focuses on fulfilling their individual financial goals. It cannot be generalized across all investors. Okay. So the product or the scheme that you sell or you are willing to sell must always match the investor's defined risk appetite. Okay. So you need to understand that if an investor comes to me with a conservative approach that I have very low or moderate risk, I cannot suggest them schemes that hold high risk, right? So it cannot be against their choice or against their, goals or against their requirements, right? No product beyond the upper ceiling of risk tolerance can be recommended. So I say generally I prefer low risk kind of investment options. I can go maximum to moderate. So I cannot suggest any scheme that crosses the moderate risk on riskometer. Okay, a very clear thing. No exceptions are allowed. You cannot be like once in a blue moon, or you might do it with some people. No, there is no exception allowed. You have to follow the principle of appropriateness with any investor who comes across your way. Suitability is mandatory. It is never a choice. And that is why the investor is always asked whether the scheme that you're investing in, you have the complete knowledge and whether you have the appropriateness of the scheme or not. Okay. Now, when you talk about the execution only model, if a transaction is not classified as advisory, see, the transaction can classified either as advisory or execution only. There is no third category in which you can classify any particular transaction, correct? So when you classify the transaction as execution only model, the distributor believes that the product is unsuitable. Okay, so if any scheme is not suitable to a particular investor based on their requirements or risk appetite or financial goals, I have to, in a way, communicate the same in writing to the investor. Okay. Now, if I inform the investor in writing that this scheme might not really be suitable as per your financial goals or risk appetite, and the investor still insists on investing that particular scheme, it's his or her choice. Okay. The investor must acknowledge it. Must acknowledge it means I have been informed. That is what I have to acknowledge. The decision is mine whether I want to accept it and leave that scheme, or whether I want to take a risk and still invest in that scheme. That's a choice. Okay. Investor must confirm that the transaction is execution only despite the warning. Even after getting the warning, I am still willing to invest into this scheme. I have to confirm that. Okay. No additional charges can be taken other than permitted charges, which has been set by SEBI as transaction charges for this particular work. Even in execution only mode, the distributor cannot ignore the suitability. In both the cases, the suitability of the scheme to the investor's goals has to be checked. So the principle of appropriateness or the suitability of a mutual fund scheme cannot be ignored either in the advisory mode or in the execution only mode as well. Okay. Now, when you talk about mis-selling, which is completely prohibited by SEBI and strictly looked upon, what is mis-selling? Making false or misleading statements. Now, as a mutual fund distributor, just for the sake of selling your schemes and earning on the basis of commission, you cannot cheat with the investors. You cannot make false claims or misleading statements through which you tend to get people to invest into your schemes. This is completely not allowed. You will get a guaranteed return of 20%. The returns can never be guaranteed. So you cannot make these statements, right? Concealing material facts, in a way trying to hide the facts that are important or hide the information that are important for an investor to look through before making any investment decisions. Concealing the risk factor of the scheme. That is why riskometer is very important. Okay, so considering the risk involved with any particular scheme, an investor makes certain decisions whether they want to invest into that scheme or not. Okay, risk consideration cannot be the only factor, but it is one of the important factors that any investor would look upon before investing into the scheme. So you cannot try to conceal the risk factor that is associated or in a way manipulate the risk factor. So if a scheme literally has high level of risk, you cannot show it as moderate or low, correct? Failing to ensure the suitability, not ensuring the scheme is suitable as per the financial goals of the investor. If a distributor ignores suitability, it can amount to mis-selling as well, which I've already quoted earlier. So it is very important that you look through all these processes and ensure you do not do any of these, otherwise it will be classified as mis-selling, and the rules and regulations for mis-selling, their penalties and punishments by SEBI is very strict. Okay. Key conceptual understanding. So any distributor may provide advice, but it must be incidental to distribution only. You cannot call yourself as an investment advisor. So I can provide advice to my investors based on their requirements and the suitability of different schemes that I hold, right? They cannot project themselves as financial planners or investment advisors, like I've already said. Suitability analysis is compulsory in both the scenarios, both as a mutual fund distributor and as an advisor. Okay. So clear thing, clear, advisor and distributor cannot be one and the same. Whether you are a distributor or a mutual fund advisor, investment advisor, there are certain criteria that you need to fulfill. That's it. Okay. Now, when you talk about the nomination facility for a distributor, which is a very important thing to know if you're thinking of becoming a mutual fund distributor in India. Okay. Now, when you talk about the nomination facility applies to any mutual fund distributor who is registered with AMFI with a valid ARN number. Here, I say, for example, I am a mutual fund distributor registered with AMFI with a valid ARN number. Tomorrow, in case of any event of my death, what will happen to the trail commission that I earn? Because after my death, if the trail commission completely stops, there is a problem with the family that I have. Okay, that trail commission is a form of income. So to secure the interest of the family members of the distributors, this is a new facility that was started by SEBI. So for many distributors that are self-employed as individual distributors, trail commission is their primary source of earning. Now, in case of any death of the distributor, income of the family may stop and they might end up in trouble. So in this case, AMFI has advised all the AMCs to provide a nomination facilities to all the distributors. Again, only distributors that are registered with AMFI with a valid ARN number, right? So when you talk about the commission to a nominee, first thing first, commission is paid to a nominee or the legal heir after the death of the distributor. So you have to give the original death certificate that is attested by a gadget officer. Okay. So that death certificate has to be submitted to request for the commission to be transferred on the name of the nominee. So payment continues till the AUM under the ARN becomes null. Now, if any particular investors who is registered with that particular distributor in a way dilutes their investment or requests for a change in distributor and the AUM becomes nil, then the commission will stop. But till the investors stay invested via that particular mutual fund distributor, the commission will continue. No new businesses can be done under the ARN number of the deceased. So do not confuse on this. If I am a nominee, I get the commission. But on the ARN number of the person who is deceased, I cannot do any further transactions after their death. So their AR number does exist, but not for transactions. Correct? No new SIPs, STPs, SWPs registration allowed under that ARN. Any form of new transactions after their death are not allowed under that particular registered ARN number. Right? If nomination is registered, no need for succession certificate and only death certificate and requirement documents are needed, like I've already said. However, before you make nominations, you need to fulfill certain criteria again. The person whom you are nominating on your behalf or After your death, if you say this X person should receive all the commissions that are on my name or my ARN number, the person nominated also should have a valid ARN number and their KYD should be completed. Okay, so that is again a criteria that is required. Now, the legal head document must be produced and succession certificate or other legal documents may be required as per the AMC policy. Different AMCs might have different policies and different ways of verifying the nominee details. Okay. Important things. The commission will be paid to the nominee only if the ARN number of the deceased was valid at the time of his or her death. If in any case the AR number was suspended during that period, the commission will be not paid. Commission payable only on business mobilized during the validity of the ARN will be paid. Any transaction that was made during a period when the ARN number was not valid, the commission on that will not be paid to the nominee. The nominee need not be an ARN holder to receive the commission, but the nominee acts as a trustee for their legal heirs. So, I'm very sorry for that. Pardon me for my mistake. The nominee does not need to have an ARN number. Okay. The deceased should have a valid ARN number and their KYD documents done during the period of their death. Okay. For transfer of AUM to the nominee must have a valid ARN and be KYD compliant if the transfer of AUM is done to the nominee. Here, the nominee will need to have an ARN number and have to be KYD compliant. The old ARN must be surrendered here, okay? Because further transactions cannot be made on the ARN number of the deceased. The entire AUM must be transferred, not partial. It cannot be 50-50, it cannot be partial. The entire AUM has to be transferred. Okay, in that case, the investors are also informed about the change in ARN, okay? Change of distributor. Now, this is again a very important part for you to know. Whether you are an investor or whether you are willing to become a mutual fund distributor in India, the investor has complete right to any point of time ask for a change in their existing distributor. Now, this does not require a separate legal process or any NOC document from the existing distributor. However, there are certain exceptions and there are certain rules and procedures to do the same. Investors, like I said, they have the right to change the distributor at any point of time without giving any valid reason. However, to prevent unethical practices such as poaching of other distributors, clients, etc., if any distributor code is changed in a folio, no commission is payable to the old distributor. No commission is payable to the new distributor as well for, I guess, a cooling period of 12 months, if I'm not wrong. Okay. This is done to ensure that there is no unethical poaching of different clients. So, I need to know if I'm trying to poach the client of any other distributor for the next 12 months, even if that client comes to me, I am not going to earn commission out of it. Okay. So, yeah, this is mainly done to ensure there are no unethical practices here. Now, if the change is voluntarily due to the cessation of the business by the distributor. So, if I am a distributor and I am closing down my business or closing down my role as a distributor, correct? In that case, the new distributor will be paid the commission because here there was no case of poaching. Because I closed my business, my investor had to search another distributor, correct? In that case, the commission will be paid to the new distributor as per the SEBI and AMFI guidelines. Okay. Allowed only in specific cases. Now, if the change in legal structure happens of the distributor's company or partnership or LLP or as an individual, if there is a merger, acquisition or business transfer, family AUM consolidation happens or complete business transfer happens, in such cases, it is again allowed. Okay. Now, there are certain conditions. The entire AUM must be transferred. Transfer only to valid ARN holder. Old ARN must be surrendered. KYD compliance is required and partial transfer is not permitted, like I've already said earlier. Okay. The next, we will continue with unit number 7 in the next lecture. We have already completed with unit number 6. If you see the level of questions you get in unit number 6, it is very simple kind of questions that you get from this unit. So you can say this unit is very scoring with the concepts that are very easy. There is no too much of technical data to remember. So you can just go through all the concepts, just revise them once and you're done. Okay. We are going to start with unit number 7 in the next lecture. But for today, bye-bye. See you, take care and have a great day ahead.